Imagine waking up one morning and your life savings gone. Not stolen, not lost, just frozen by a country 10,000 miles away. This isn't a movie. This isn't fiction. This happened to millions of real people, real families, real businesses, real lives. And the weapon used wasn't a bomb. It wasn't a missile. It was something far more powerful. It was money, or more precisely, the removal of it. Right now, Iran is living inside one of the most brutal financial experiments in modern history. A country sitting on the world's second largest natural gas reserves. A country with over 85 million people. A country that was once called the economic heart of the Middle East. Today, its currency has lost over 80% of its value in just a few years. Inflation is not 10%, not 20%. We're talking 40, 50%. Some months touching 60%. Ordinary Iranians are doing the math at the grocery store and losing every single time. But here's the question nobody is really asking. How did it get this bad? Was it mismanagement, corruption, bad leadership? Or was there an invisible hand from across the ocean, quietly strangling the Iranian economy? The answer is more complex and more terrifying than you think. Because what happened to Iran, that could be a blueprint, a warning, a preview of what financial warfare looks like in the 21st century. And by the end of this video, you'll never look at economic sanctions the same way again. So let's go back to where it all started. Let's trace the moment the financial noose began to tighten. Because this story doesn't start with Iran. It starts with power. It starts with oil. And it starts with one country deciding to control the world's most important resource, not with tanks, but with transactions. Here's something they never taught you in school. The United States doesn't just have an army. It has something far more powerful. Something every country on Earth depends on. Something so deeply embedded in global trade that losing access to it doesn't just hurt, it suffocates. That weapon? The US dollar. Think about this for a second. Nearly 88% of all global trade transactions happen in US dollars. When Japan buys oil from Saudi Arabia, dollars. When Brazil imports technology from South Korea, dollars. When a small business owner in Tehran tries to import raw materials, dollars. The entire global financial system runs on one currency, and the United States, it controls the pipes. Now here's where it gets dangerous. In 2012, the US made a decision that would shake Iran's economy to its core. They didn't send soldiers. They sent a message to the world's banks. The message was simple. If you do business with Iran, you don't do business with us. And just like that, Iran was cut off from SWIFT, the global banking communication system that connects every financial institution on the planet. Imagine being locked out of every ATM, every bank, every wire transfer, every international payment. Overnight. Iranian businesses couldn't receive payments. Iranian hospitals couldn't import medicine. Iranian factories couldn't buy raw materials. The shelves didn't empty immediately, but the clock had started ticking, and everybody knew it. But wait, here's what makes this story even more chilling. The sanctions didn't just target the government. They targeted ordinary people. The engineer trying to pay his child's university fees abroad, the small business owner who needed foreign suppliers, the mother trying to send money to her daughter studying in Europe. All of them blocked. All of them collateral damage in a financial war they never voted for. And here's the twist that nobody talks about. Iran didn't just sit there. Iran fought back. Not with missiles, not with armies, but with something unexpected. Something that would force the entire world to pay attention. Iran started building a parallel financial system, a shadow economy, an underground network of transactions that moved billions of dollars without touching a single American bank. And when you find out how they did it, you'll realize that financial warfare never has a clean winner. Because every wall the US built, Iran found a door. And what lies behind that door changes everything we thought we knew about economic power. What happens when you corner a country? When you cut off its banks, freeze its assets, strangle its currency? You'd expect collapse, right? You'd expect surrender. But Iran didn't collapse. Iran adapted. And what it built in the shadows should terrify every economist on the planet. Let's talk about survival mode. When SWIT cut Iran off, something remarkable happened. Iranian traders didn't stop trading. They got creative. They started using a system called Hawala, an ancient, informal money transfer network. No banks, no paper trails, no SWIFT codes. Just trust, just networks, just people. A merchant in Tehran calls a contact in Dubai. Money appears in Istanbul. No transaction recorded. No American bank involved. Completely invisible to Western financial surveillance. Billions, and I mean billions of dollars started moving through these shadow channels. Iranian oil was being sold through ghost companies in Malaysia, China, and the UAE. Ships would turn off their GPS trackers in the middle of the ocean. Oil would transfer from Iranian tankers to foreign vessels at sea. By the time it reached the buyer, it was Malaysian oil. It was Iraqi oil. It was anything but Iranian oil. And the buyers? They knew exactly what they were buying, because Iranian oil was being sold at a massive discount, 30% cheaper, sometimes 40% cheaper. When you're offering that kind of deal, countries don't ask too many questions. China became Iran's biggest lifeline, quietly absorbing millions of barrels, quietly keeping Iran's economy from completely flatlining. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn, because Iran wasn't just surviving the sanctions, it was learning from them. Every loophole it found, documented. Every shadow network it built, strengthened. Iran began investing heavily in something the US never anticipated: cryptocurrency. Yes, you heard that right. When your currency is worthless and your banks are blocked, Bitcoin doesn't care about sanctions. Ethereum doesn't need SWIFT. Iran started mining cryptocurrency at a massive scale, using its cheap subsidized electricity to power thousands of mining rigs, converting sanctioned rials into borderless digital assets. At one point, Iran accounted for nearly 8% of global Bitcoin mining. The US had built the most sophisticated financial blockade in history, and Iran had found a way to tunnel underneath it, digitally. But here's the question that keeps financial experts awake at night. If Iran could do this, what stops other countries from doing the same? What stops an entire alternative financial system from emerging? One that doesn't need dollars, one that doesn't need American banks, one that makes US sanctions completely irrelevant. Because the truth is, that system isn't just a possibility anymore. It's already being built. And the country leading that construction is not who you think. What if I told you that Iran's financial struggle quietly sparked something enormous, something that powerful nations had been whispering about for decades but never dared to act on? Until now. Because when the US weaponized the dollar against Iran, other countries watched very carefully, and they asked themselves one terrifying question: are we next? Let's talk about the domino effect nobody predicted. Russia watched Iran get cut off from SWIFT in 2012. They took notes. They started building their own alternative, SPFS, a domestic financial messaging system, just in case. Then in 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, the US pulled the same trigger. Russia was disconnected from SWIFT almost overnight. But this time, Russia was prepared. They had backup systems, shadow networks, alternative channels. Sound familiar? Iran had already written the playbook. And then came the meeting that shook Washington's financial strategists to their core. In 2023, at the BRICS Summit, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, these 5 economies, representing nearly 40% of the world's GDP, sat together, and they discussed one agenda item that made Wall Street nervous: a new currency. a currency that bypasses the dollar entirely, a currency for trade between BRICS nations. No American banks, no SWIFT, no dollar dependency. Now here's where Iran enters the picture again. In 2023, Iran was formally invited to join BRICS. Think about what that means. The country that was financially isolated, the country that was supposed to be crushed by sanctions, was now being welcomed into an economic alliance representing half the world's population. Iran didn't just survive the sanctions, it became a symbol, a proof of concept, proof that you can survive without the dollar, proof that alternative systems can work. And powerful nations took that proof and started building something much bigger. China accelerated its yuan-based oil trading system. Saudi Arabia, America's oldest Middle Eastern ally, started accepting yuan for oil payments. Read that again. Saudi Arabia, the country whose entire relationship with America was built on petrodollars, now selling oil in yuan. The foundation of American financial dominance, the petrodollar system, was showing its first real cracks. And Iran? Iran was quietly positioning itself at the center of this new financial geography, building pipelines, not oil pipelines, but financial pipelines, connecting itself to China's payment systems, connecting itself to Russia's alternative networks, slowly, methodically rebuilding its economic infrastructure outside the reach of American sanctions. But here's the brutal reality that nobody wants to admit. Even with all of this, ordinary Iranians are still suffering. The shadow economy benefits the powerful. The cryptocurrency profits go to the connected. The BRICS alliance helps governments. But the mother in Tehran? Still paying triple for basic groceries, still watching her savings evaporate, still trapped between two giants playing a game of financial chess, using real people as the pieces. So who is really winning this war? Is America's financial pressure working, or has it backfired spectacularly, creating the very alternative system it feared most? The answer is more complicated than either side wants to admit. And in our final part, we're going to look at the brutal truth, the numbers, the human cost, the future, and one final question that will change how you see every economy, including your own. We've talked about shadow economies. We've talked about crypto mining. We've talked about BRICS alliances. We've talked about petrodollar cracks. But now, let's talk about the thing that matters most. The thing that gets lost in every geopolitical discussion, every sanctions debate, every financial strategy meeting in Washington. The human being. Meet a fictional but very real composite of millions of Iranians. His name is Reza. He's 42 years old. He runs a small printing business in Tehran. 10 years ago, Reza had 5 employees, a decent income, a small apartment he was slowly paying off, dreams of sending his son to university. Today, 2 employees remain. The apartment loan has become impossible to service. His printing equipment needs imported parts, parts he cannot buy because suppliers won't touch Iranian orders. His son's university dream? Quietly buried. Not because Reza failed, but because the financial system around him was systematically dismantled. Reza's story is not unique. It's multiplied by millions. The World Bank estimates sanctions have cost Iran hundreds of billions in lost GDP. Iran's rial has gone from 32,000 per dollar in 2012 to over 500,000 per dollar today. That's not inflation, that's financial annihilation. A middle class, carefully built over decades, erased in less than 10 years. But here's the uncomfortable question. Did the sanctions achieve their goal? Was Iran's nuclear program stopped? Was the Iranian government weakened? Was the regime behavior changed? The answer, according to most independent analysts, is painfully clear. The Iranian government is still standing. The nuclear program advanced further during peak sanctions pressure. The Revolutionary Guard, the very entity sanctions targeted, actually expanded its economic control during the sanctions period. Because when the formal economy collapses, black markets flourish. And who controls black markets? Not ordinary citizens, not small business owners like Reza, the powerful, the connected, the untouchable. So here's the devastating irony at the heart of this entire story. Sanctions were designed to pressure the government, but the government found ways to survive. Sanctions were designed to protect ordinary Iranians from a dangerous regime, but ordinary Iranians bore 100% of the pain. The weapon aimed at the powerful landed squarely on the powerless. And now, zoom out. Look at the bigger picture. Because what happened in Iran is not just an Iranian story, it's a warning. Russia, Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, Myanmar, every country under heavy U.S. financial sanctions tells the same story. Governments adapt, elites survive, people suffer. And here's what makes 2024 and beyond even more dangerous. The tools of financial warfare are getting more powerful. AI-powered transaction monitoring, digital currency surveillance systems, central bank digital currencies that governments can freeze with a single keystroke. The financial cage is getting smaller, and it's not just being built for Iran. Think about your own country for a moment. Think about how dependent your economy is on systems you don't control. The payment apps on your phone, the banking networks your salary flows through, the currency your savings are stored in. Now ask yourself, what happens if access to those systems becomes conditional? What happens when financial participation requires political compliance? That's not a conspiracy theory. That's the logical endpoint of the system being built right now. Iran just happened to be the test case. So, what's the conclusion? Is America wrong to use financial pressure? Is Iran innocent in all of this? The honest answer is this isn't about right or wrong. It's about power. And power, financial, military, political, always extracts its cost. The only question is, who pays? History has answered that question the same way every single time. Not the powerful, never the powerful. Always, always the ordinary person. The Rezas of the world, trying to run a small business, trying to send a son to university, trying to survive inside a war they never declared. And that, more than any economic statistic, is the real story of sanctions. Not the geopolitics, not the dollar dominance, not the BRICS alliance, but the quiet devastation of millions of lives caught in the crossfire of a financial war fought by giants. If this video made you think differently about economics, about power, about the invisible systems shaping your life, then share it with someone who needs to see it. Because the first step to understanding the world is knowing who really pays the price. And now, you know.